כמה צריכים עלות ועד הפסקות יומיומיות וההתלבטויות יומיומיות שקיימות במקביל. ההתייחסות של הרבי היא התייחסות לרבי. כיוון שהרבי לא התייחס שתקופה התקיים הרבי התייחס לנושא העקרוני. אז אם אתה שואל את דעתי או אני את דעתי, לא נראה. העדכנית לרגע זה, כמו שהייתה מבחינתי, ברגע הראשון כאשר ישבתי איתו בצורה של תקשיב. בסופו של דבר, חלק הדברים מתקיים, ומה שלא מתקיים עוד יתקיים. בצורה כזאת או בצורה אחרת, כמובן תחת מאפיינים, תחת העדכנים שונים ושונים. אבל אין תקבל דברים לא ספק.
Okay, so we see obviously that Rebbe's very, very deep involvement in the issues of Eretz Yisrael and the relevance that it is for us today. So there's three parts to the Shiur, three things that we're going to go through, three topics we're going to cover. Number one, what is our connection to Eretz Yisrael? Right, it's a big topic. Why is it ours? Why do we have a right to say it's ours anymore? There's many, many people that claim it's ours. What is our connection? Why is it ours according to Torah? Number one. The second is, what are Jewish values? How are we, what is our job? What is our responsibility? What is the Torah way to protect Eretz Yisrael? That's the second piece. And the third is the Jewish pride. What is our responsibility? What should we be doing? How should we relate to? How should we talk to our friends, our neighbors, our fellow Jews about Eretz Yisrael? So let's jump right in. On the first one, you can look on page 13, text number one. We're going to go to what is our claim to Eretz Yisrael? Why do we, the Jewish people, we talk about Eretz Yisrael a lot, we say it's ours, we visit there. Why is it our land? So if we look in Bereshis, there's the text number one. It's in English over here. I'll read it in the Hebrew. On that day, Hashem made a covenant with Abraham, with Avram, saying, to your descendants, I have given the land from the river of Egypt to the Euphrates River. This is Hashem telling the Jewish people, telling Avram, our forefather, that I'm giving you this land, very specific about this land, which is between the river of Egypt and the Euphrates River, which, according to all opinions, undisputed, this is the land of Eretz Yisrael. So, what's the Torah telling us? The land of Eretz Yisrael is ours for one reason. Because Hashem gave it to us. Hashem gave it to us. It's written in the Torah. It's written there 3,000 years ago. It said in the Torah, which was written 3,000 years ago, that Hashem gave the land to Avram and to his descendants, which is the Jewish people. It's not our land because Jews have been living there for thousands of years, although that's also true. And it's not our land. Our claim to the land, the claim to Eretz Yisrael, is not because the UN partition in 1948 or that proclaimed that the Jewish people can have a land, although that is also true. And it's not our land because it's the only tiny sliver of space that the Jews are safe and have a place to protect themselves after thousands of years of being persecuted, although that's also true. Rather, the one good, essential claim we have is because Hashem gave it to us. That's why, that is our only winning argument for why the land of Eretz Yisrael belongs to us. And if you may have noticed, something which is not, this is not a line that has been constantly repeated by politicians, everyone tries to give different explanations. It's ours because we deserve it. It's ours because we fought for it, because we won it. Those are all true, but those are all disputable. And last week, when Bibi Netanyahu spoke in front of the Congress, he actually said this: it's our land because it's a land that was given to us by God to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. And that's the reason. Now, obviously, that's something which is going to that's something that's going to be disputed. People are going to say, okay, well, how do we know this? Why is it yours? Who said God gave it to you? So for this, we have the first Rashi in the Torah. And if you look in the first Rashi, it's in text 2. I'll paraphrase it, but the Rashi says that why was the Torah, many of you have probably already learned this, that Rashi says, why is the Torah start? The Torah is a book of commandments. It's teaching us about the Torah. Why is it given to us why does the Torah not start with the first commandment? Right? Torah should start with the Dibros, or at least talk about the mitzvahs. Why does it go through the whole talk about Avram and about the creation of the world, and the book of Bereshit goes through all the different details about going to Eretz Yisrael and all the others? And Rashi said that the reason why is because there's going to come a point where the nations of the world are going to dispute our connection to Eretz Yisrael. Therefore, the reason why the Torah starts with the whole story of Bereshit and the whole story of going to Eretz Yisrael is in order to refute these claims of different nations. That's what Rashi says. Now, Rashi lived 1,000 years ago, and Rashi quoted the Medrash Rabbah who lived 700 years before us. So already 1,700 years ago, the Medrash Rabbah was saying that the reason why the Torah starts talking about, the Torah starts with the whole story of how the Jews got to Eretz Yisrael is in order to refute the idiot kids on college campuses today. That's what it's there for. The Torah is there to tell us the whole beginning of the Torah is because that it belongs to us. So I know what a lot of you are probably thinking. Okay, that sounds good. When you're sitting in a shul, be able to tell your fellow Jews, or you're sitting around your Shabbos table to tell it to your children. But how are you going to go tell this? Who's going to believe us? You can tell this answer, and who believes us? This answer's not going to work. To which the Rebbe said, okay, but have the other answers worked? Have you ever found that sitting in front of a college student, or sitting in front of somebody who's asking about Israel rights, by giving them the whole history and the wars and how we won it, has anyone's mind ever been changed because of any of the other arguments? Anyone here ever convince somebody based on I don't think so. Right? So none of the other answers have worked. And this is an answer which was given to us, which we have written in Torah documents, sperm, thousands of years old, that has this answer already written. And the truth is, it's not really about convincing anyone, because you're not gonna. I don't think anyone was ever convinced about an argument. Anyone that was pro, anyone was against, you're never going to convince anyone in an argument. So what are we doing here? Why are we even looking for a solution? Because the problem, or who we're trying to convince, is not the other people. We need to be convinced. The problem isn't the non-Jews. The problem isn't the Gentiles. The problem is that the Jews don't believe the answer themselves. So what the Rebbe taught was, that the Rebbe is saying is that we have to go out. Our job about teaching this, teaching to our children, teaching it to our neighbors, teaching it in shul, teaching it to our own, to our families, instilling it in ourselves, is that we should have the conviction, we should have the pride, and we should believe it. We should believe it. The reason why people respect us, when people respect us, is not when they believe our reasons. It's not when we'll convince them that we're right, but when they're convinced that we believe that we're right. When they're convinced that we believe in it, that we actually believe this is our land. And if you look, lahavdil, at the other side, at the terrorists, Yimach Shemam, I hate to say it, but they believe it. They believe in what they're saying. And you know what? People respect them for it. They call them terrorists, you can call them murderers, but they're respected because people know that they believe in what they're saying. So our job, and in knowing this answer, the main goal here is that we should believe it. We need to understand that. And if you look at text 3, you can see I'm not going to read it out loud, but you see there's a letter from the Rebbe that he wrote to, on page 18, the Rebbe wrote to the president of Israel, Zalman Shazar, that the goal of this argument is not to prevail at the United Nations or the Vatican. Rather, the goal is that the morale, if we understand it and we actually believe it, it'll help our argument and people will respect us. So that's number one. Number one, why it's ours. Okay, the next thing, Jewish values. So what do we do? Now that we believe it's ours, what do we do? So now we're going to go and talk about how do we protect our life? We have Eretz Yisrael, people are attacking us, we've had wars. What's our job? What's the Rebbe's view on all this stuff going on? People are attacking us, there's suicide bombs, there's ceasefires, there's peace treaties. What's going on over here? What's the terrorist view? So the Rebbe is very, very adamant on one point, and you'll see this across basically the rest of this year. The Torah perspective and the Torah's outlook on life, an outlook on the world, there is one thing that is important, and there's many things that are important. The most and ultimate important thing is the protection of life. We have to protect Jewish lives at all costs. Preserving human life, that is all that counts. That's all that counts. Everything else gets put to the wayside. There are other things that are important. The land of Eretz Yisrael is important. Mitzvahs are important. Besides, for 3 mitzvahs, we all know, everything else goes to the wayside to protect Jewish life. And as we'll see, we'll talk about this as we go. So if you look, what's the source for that? If you look in the text 4, which is on page 19, the Torah instructs us, if one is coming to kill you, rise up to kill them first. Okay, that's a Gemara, which doesn't seem so practical today. But what is that saying? How did the Rebbe interpret that to today's politics or the geopolitical situation in Eretz Yisrael? That we have an obligation as Jews, if we get even a whiff that the enemies are planning on attacking us, you don't wait for them to come and attack us and then defend yourself. We have an obligation from the Torah, attack them first, a preemptive strike. Now, if you look at the history of the state of Israel from 1947, what was the one time that the Jews did a preemptive strike of a war? 67, right? What was the one war that the Jews resoundingly won since the creation of the land of Israel? Since the state of Israel? 67. What happened over there? The Jews, the Israeli army, did a preemptive strike. They were the Egyptian armies and the Syrian armies were all planning a strike in Israel. Israel went, preemptively struck Egypt and completely annihilated the Egyptian Air Force. In 6 days, the land was over. The war was over. Now contrast that with what happened a couple years later in the Yom Kippur War. For those who learned the history of the Yom Kippur War, it was one of the most tragic wars of the Jewish people. This happened just a few years later in 1973. There was a similar buildup of the forces, of the Egyptian forces. And again, all the signs were there. All the warning signs were there. They knew they were attacked. They knew there was an attack coming. Israel, Golda Meir was the president then. There was a tremendous amount of pressure being put on her. Do not preemptive attack. If America's warning her, if you attack them, we are not going to protect you. Well, if they do attack you, we'll protect you. We'll be there. You cannot start the war. And unfortunately, she listened. The Jews were attacked. It ended up being the costliest war. Thousands of Jewish people were killed, unfortunately. And the consequences, what the Jews suffered because of the Yom Kippur War. This is a couple years after the morale of the Jewish people were there. Yeah, the morale of the Jewish people was very high from 67. That was, for those of you, obviously it was before my time, but for those of you that remember, the morale after the 6 Day War was like incredible. 73, that was completely wiped out. And not only that, the Israel was less respected. Other countries realized, we don't have to worry. We can attack them. Worst case is they'll fight back. They're never going to start up with us. They listen to the pressure. So not only does preemptive attacks work, not doing preemptive attacks has deadly consequences. So just two important notes to make on that is that this imperative that we have to strike first, this is nothing unique about the holiness of Eretz Yisrael, or that we need to protect the land of Eretz Yisrael. This is purely from the perspective that we have to protect a human life. We have to protect ourselves. We have to protect human life, number one. And number two, it's crucial to understand that this approach, which is the Torah's approach, this is the compassionate approach. You could look and say that's barbaric. You're starting up. We're people we should be looking for peaceful methods. This is not us looking for this is the compassionate method. Because by preemptively striking, you're letting your enemies know, don't start up. And by preemptively striking, you're letting them know you should not start over. I think the greatest example of this, while nobody know for sure, is if you learn history about World War II, what happened before World War II, where there was the Nazi Germany was rising up and was gaining power, and everyone knew was coming, and there was all types of people and diplomats that were going to make peace. We're going to figure out a way, and we can't start a war. We can't take out Nazi Germany before they start. Look what happened. 80 million people were killed. Would there have been bloodshed if there would have been a preemptive strike on Berlin? Sure. But I don't think it would be 80 million people dying. That would have happened. So now we know what we have to do. Now we know what our job is. We got to go. We have to attack them. We have to preemptively strike. But how do you end the war? How do you finish it? How do you finish it? And the answer is, and the Torah says, the way to finish it is by finishing them. Finish them. It has to, no ceasefires. A war ends by absolute, complete capitulation and surrender of the enemy. You don't have to kill all the people, but they need complete surrender. No ceasefire, no deals, no exchanging. You have to completely finish the job. And we see the Rebbe, and we'll see 2 videos here now where the Rebbe speaks about in English, about the wars with the Israeli army. They were at victory. They were beating them. They had them completely surrounded, and then they backed off. They said, "We're not going to. We're natural. We're nice. We're not people that destroy." And that's not the right thing. That's the wrong thing. What they're doing there is telling the enemy, worst case, even if we lose, they're not going to really take us out, and that completely ruins the whole point of the deterrence.
Und das Geld hat sich vergisst, fest, frei, los, nur, ich bekomme wie das sein macht, ungeheben. Das ist der Nachschub, so das Patient, der Raum und der Schliach, zu seiner Kirche, dann wird nach dem Leben nicht so. Dann wird das Leben nicht so, kommen Leben machen, das sagt, die Gießer kommt gut, die das Relot, gute Patient, das macht nicht die Tour, die nicht wollen. Das Englische, was wenn Leben soll man sagen, sagt, dann geht, dies an Kuch, die Schule, dann geht, und dann denken, das was man uns dann getan. Und wie was mit getan hat, dass die Sachen mit der Fleißig so nicht gemacht haben, mit Tour, doch was ich gesagt وده الهيك المعرفي وده التصميم الديمقراطي وده البريد وده الفيمينيست وده الفايبل وده التصميم التصميم بتاع الزراعة ده أدريب التصميم بتاع الزراعة إيش الجو ده الجو وصلنا الجو working in life for bonus for then meeting God. Mensch mit Schuli und nicht mit Partei eng an einfach zu sehen, die gleich viel als gesehen, der Nachteil soll bringen nach Gott. Die Karriere sei, was ich das Stage, was mit dem Bund, als sie so sagen, tausend Bakterien zusammen sagen. No, then the funding that the bacteria live in, they know China state.
The Israelis began advancing in all fronts, and they arrived at more or less 40 kilometers from Damascus. It was already the 5th day of the war. I get a call from the human client. The Rebbe said, go and ask Dayan to enter Damascus.
בשמחת תורה, אני, שלמה לוין, האח שלו, ניסינו להסביר לרבי שמשה דיין פוחד בהתערבות רוסית לטובתם של הערבים ואז מצבים באיראן. מאוד לא בטוח מה יעשו כאן. הרבי אמר לו, אין טעם, אין היגיון במצב. הוא אומר שהרוסים סתם מאיימים, לא צריך לחשוש מהרוסים. האמריקאים מעוניינים שאנחנו ננצח בסוריה, הם רק לא רואים להם את זה. והרבי ביקש מאיתנו, בתום שיחה ארוכה מאוד, שנחזור באותו ערב ולטלפן, כל אחד במישהו מכיר, הוא יכול לטלפן, לראש הממשלה, לשר הביטחון, או למישהו אחר מראשי השלטון בישראל, תגידו בשביל שישראל צריכה לסיים את מלחמת יום הכיפורים בשלושה שבועות.
Dayan took it very seriously. Said to me, I cannot do it from a manpower point of view. I called back human, and yes, the Rebbe was on the line. The Rebbe's answer was, it's a big mistake. It's a big mistake. That all.
הוא אמר לי, נשמע, לכם כתבו תוצאות. זאת אומרת, כדי לפתח צדדים, אנחנו הגענו ל-101 קילומטר מהאווירה המצרית. אנחנו הגענו ל-40 קילומטר מהאווירה הסורית. הוא אומר, לא. מנצחים הרבי אומר, זה חופשי. כן, אבל פוליטופיסטיות אומר, מה השמון סיבר שהיו דלק? הוא היה צריך להשתמש בדלק שהמצרים הביאו בשבילה, על המצרים, הוא אומר, לנו התקפה, כלומר, לאוכל, בדלקים, בטוח שהיה לה חדרי דלק. ולמה לא השתמשו בדלק הזה ולהגיע לחיפות?
Okay, so now we know about what our job is and how we have to, how we confront the enemy. Now let's go take a little step back first. What do we do to make sure that we don't get to a point where the enemy is coming to attack us? How do we protect ourselves? What type of buffer, what type of security? Today we're all doing security assessments and we have guards and we have all different types of things in order that we shouldn't have an attack here. We're talking about here in Pittsburgh, right? So what does Eretz Yisrael, what do they need to do in order to protect Eretz Yisrael from any potential terrorist attacks? So this, you'll hear Siman Shin Tes, right? If you'll ask many Lubavitchers or people, especially people that are very into what the Rebbe talks about Eretz Yisrael, talk about Siman Shin Tes, which means chapter 329, which is in Shulchan Aruch. There's a halacha in Shulchan Aruch, which the Rebbe spoke about tens, if not hundreds of times when it relates to the land of Eretz Yisrael. So it's on page 21. I'm going to actually read the English inside of that text. The halacha in Shulchan Aruch, Shin Tes, chapter 329, obviously where we get all halacha from. If non-Jews besiege Jewish cities, if their goal is monetary, we do not desecrate Shabbos to protect ourselves. But if they came to kill or with no presented reason, which is very important, meaning we don't know why they're there. So if they're coming and they say, give me your food, we don't desecrate Shabbos, just give them their food. But if they come and we don't know what they're doing there, they didn't state a reason, we go out with weapons and desecrate the Shabbos amount of them. Arm up, get your guns and war. That's the general one. Second piece, extremely important. In a city near the border, even if they just come to plunder straw or hay, they're just coming, they're little bandits, little thieves that are coming and want to steal a little hay for the horses. We initiate a military offense, even if it entails desecrating Shabbos. So let's look at this halacha. Sense that if you're a city in Eretz Yisrael, or it doesn't really apply not even just in Eretz Yisrael, in any place, a Jewish city, if you're attacked by bandits and they come and they say, give us your food, give it to them. Don't desecrate Shabbos. You got to give them your food. You got to give them your food, your bike, your scooters, your laptops, your iPads. You get everything. if they come and we don't know, and they say they're here for a pogrom, the second you get a whiff that that's their intention, or even if you don't know, even if they don't state their intention, we don't give them we give them the benefit of the doubt that they're here to kill us, and we go and we have to go all out war, gather the troops, call Hatzalah, call the Shemin, call the Shmir, everyone, we're going to war. But the second part it says is, but that's in a regular city. If you're in a border town, if you're in the border of Eretz Israel, which borders any other country, there, even if they as much as cross over the border, come into your land just to you don't know what they even say, we don't even want anything from you. We just want to take a little food. We just want war, all out war. So what's the difference? Why is there a difference between a border city and a regular city? So if we look at text 7b on page 21, Rabbi Tzvi ben Moshe says, Halacha views a city, what was Arzarua, what's in Shabbos says, Halacha views a city alongside the border differently for fear that if an enemy conquers it, it will be a launching pad that will allow them to conquer the entire land with greater ease. And on these two pieces from the Shulchan Aruch and from the Arzarua is the Rebbe's basis for saying that we have absolutely no right, not only no right, we have the absolute obligation to cede 1 inch of land to our enemies. We cannot cede 1 inch of land, not because the land is holy, not because we fought and battled to win back that land, not because we have a nice house on it. We cannot give back an inch of land because it risks the security of the Jewish people. That's the reason. Not because it's our land, not because it's holy. Again, none of those reasons, although those reasons are true as well. The reason why we cannot give up the land, because it is a plain and simple security risk. Now, why is it a security risk? So we get into all the military reasons, but everyone understands the size of Israel, the current size of it. It's extremely, extremely narrow, small piece of land compared to the enemies, compared to what they're surrounded by. There is literally no location there in Eretz Yisrael that giving it away would make them safer from a purely military standpoint. There's not 1 inch of land that would make them safer. So the Rebbe says, if it's the case, and that's something which there's never been a general ever that said that giving back land makes us military, makes us more safe militaristically, that's a word. We have absolutely no right, and it's against the Torah to give back a single inch of land. And again, remember, it's not because it's holy. It's not because it's Eretz Yisrael, although those are true too. It's because it's sakonas nefashos. That's why we have to keep it. Now, something we were thinking, and it's a very common question which is asked. It's just kind of a side note, but look at the Sinai Desert. We made a peace treaty with the Egyptians, and for 30 or 40 years, we've had peace at the southern border. That shows that it works. So sometimes it does work. So we see in that situation, maybe the Torah was wrong. So no, that's not true. Why not? For a few reasons. First of all, just because there hasn't been an attack yet from Egypt hasn't attacked, the reason why we can't give back land is because it makes us less safe. The Torah doesn't say you're guaranteed to be attacked if you give back land. The Torah says it makes you less safe. Right now, we are less safe from a strategic standpoint without having the Sinai Desert. It's like, I was thinking about it, it's like an example, if you have a pool in your backyard and you have children, and obviously it's not safe to have a pool without a gate. So you want to put up a gate, but the gate is going to ruin your view, right? So you don't put up the gate. You say, even though it makes it safe, we don't put up a gate. And after 2-3 years, luckily, Baruch Hashem, you don't have any accidents. Nobody gets hurt. There's no tragic incidents. So you say after 5 years, look, nobody's drowned yet in the pool. It shows that a gate doesn't make the pool safer. That's exactly the argument. That's an absurd argument. You're lucky. Nobody got hurt yet. That's the same argument making because we gave back the land to Egypt, therefore shows that we can give back land. No, we are less safe because of it. Now, practically, Egypt hasn't attacked us yet. True. But look at what's happening now. Gaza, where did all the tunnels, where did all the armor that they have, where did that all come from? Universally accepted, it all came from Egypt. They wouldn't have had that if we didn't give back. And even more so, the fact that we gave back that land, that opened us up to tremendous, and I think this is the most important, opened us up to tremendous international pressure. They saw, oh, the Jews, we could squeeze them. We could squeeze them. And since then, there's been pressure on the Jews, there's been pressure on Israel every single day to give back other parts of Eretz Israel. So is the Torah's, is what we're saying here, is it extreme? I think the answer is yes. The Torah is very extreme. Extreme in the sense that the Torah has an extreme sense of protection over human life. There's a very interesting letter where the Rebbe has a correspondence with one of the chief rabbis of Israel about this subject. And the Rebbe was talking about the land of, the Rebbe was talking about the capturing of the importance of Jewish life. And the chief rabbi was actually agreeing with the Rebbe. And the chief rabbi actually said to the Rebbe that the only situation where I would say that it's, to give up Jewish life is if we were like protecting the old city. And the Rebbe wrote back and said, no, even for that, it's not worth it. Even for that, it's not worth it. And to the point where, I don't know if this is confirmed, but there was after the 6-Day War, when the Israeli army went into the old city to conquer, which was a tremendous victory, the Israeli army was given orders to protect the holy sites, in Yerushalayim, in the old city, in some of the buildings and the shuls. And the Rebbe said, this is the language that I heard. The Rebbe said, and to that happen, some soldiers' lives were put at risk. The Rebbe was extremely upset. Said, we're giving up Jewish lives, we're risking Jewish lives for some old buildings, for some bricks and stones. The Rebbe would say, rather the entire old city gets flattened to the ground, than give up one soldier's life. It's not worth one soldier's life, any building in Yerushalayim. Can you imagine? That's how much the Rebbe was extreme on saying that Torah, the Rebbe was saying, interpreting Torah, his opinion on the importance of Jewish life. So this, sorry? Even the Kaisa, the Rebbe said, even the Kaisa, don't even protect the Kaisa. We'll touch on that. We'll touch on that a little bit. So to summarize, what we said about what are the Jewish values? First of all, if someone kills you, if somebody's rising to kill you, you got to kill them first. We have to have preemptive strikes. We got to go after them first. If we know that they're coming, if they're talking about it, we don't even have to guess. They proclaim it on TV. They announce it. They're saying they want to kill us. They're not hiding their intentions. Go after them first. And we've seen the one time, or maybe there was other times whenever the Israel did that, whenever we actually went through and preemptive strikes, it always worked out well for Israel. And the second thing is, we have to, when we fight this war, we got to do it until they submit, until they surrender. Don't give up. Don't stop. No ceasefires. And then we have to make sure we protect our borders. No giving away 1 inch. And we've seen, unfortunately and tragically, over the years, each time Israel didn't listen to this, when Israel waited around in 73, tragic war. When Israel even went in and didn't go to Damascus, didn't take over Cairo, we see from there, very shortly afterwards, another war started. And I think you could say, because of these three things, because of these not listening to this, directly caused how we had something like October 7th happen. Because if Israel would have listened to this, if Israel would have listened to what their enemies were telling them, do these preemptive strikes, there's no way something like this could have happened. So, one last point on this. So who decides? Who decides? Who gets to make the decision on what's the right thing to do strategically? And the Rebbe was very adamant. The people that make the decisions are only military leaders making military decisions. The security of Eretz Yisrael is not a political question. It's not something which, if we give back a little land on a geopolitical level, it's not something for the Secretary of State. It's not something for the foreign minister. The Rebbe would always say, ask the generals. Does this make us safer? Does this make us safer? Does this make us weaker? Not will America like us better? Not will Iran, hold back their fire? Not will the world, will it cause, better? Will your poll numbers go up if you do this? What? From a military standpoint, if you're at West Point University, from a military standpoint, they are the only ones, military people are the ones who should be making the solution. No politicians should have any say in this matter.
The Nekudas of Klinisch, the Technologien, derselbe Meinung zu Marcel, dieselbe Menschen, was das und die finde ich nicht will, dieselbe Menschen, was der Seele von mir, was seine Matria, und dieselbe Time, als das in der Welt zu schauen, und das in der Welt zu sein, und das in der Maschine, welche machen Israel, und das alles schlecht und nicht hinbauen, und was ist nicht. Man muss sagen, mit Fehler tun.
So what happens? So after all this, and we all this, but why? So why don't they listen? Why don't they listen? Why don't the Israeli government doesn't know this? The Jewish people don't know this. Why? Why after all these years? The pressure. There's so much unbelievable amount of pressure that's being put on the Israeli government, that's being put on Jews around the world. If we just did this, if we just give it a little bit, if we just do that, that's what causes this. That's where we get. Now, what's the answer to that? What has concessions ever got us? The Jews have made concessions. Unfortunately, have made tragic concessions after tragic concessions. It's never enough. The physics of concessions tell us that you give a little bit, everything collapses. Once you give one drop, you give 1 inch, you're going to keep pushing you forward. The pressure is tremendous, but giving 1 inch is just going to make them ask for more.
Als we zijn alle die toekomst wat gemaakt nodig is niet te veel. En dus wat mensen gemaakt worden, jede liedje wat gemaakt wordt, de zaak bezocht de budget.
So we have this pressure. Where does this pressure come from? So one thing, if the pressure is coming from other countries like Russia or from Europe or this, but we're here in the United States of America. And we know that the Rebbe considered United States as the Rebbe would talk about United States as Medina Shel Chesed. It's a nation of kindness. The Rebbe was an American citizen. The Rebbe was very grateful always about how the America treats the Jewish people and how we're welcome here. And America ultimately the United States of America is a good friend of Israel. It's a good friend. So how can we withstand, where does the pressure sometimes come the most? From the United States. What do we do? How should Israel deal with the US pressure? And this is something which the Rebbe spoke about a lot, and spoke to prime ministers, spoke to generals about what to do about the Israeli pressure, about the pressure from the United States. And what the Rebbe said is that it's important for us to understand the president of the United States is the president of the United States. He's not the president of Israel. The prime minister of Israel is the prime minister of Israel. He's not the prime minister of the United States. The job of the president of the United States is to look out for the interests of the United States. The job of the prime minister of Israel is to look out for the interests of Israel. So while we are, and hopefully will continue for till Mashiach comes, as United States, a very close ally of Israel, we have to understand that the interests of the United States do not always line up with the interest of Israel, which means that there are times where United States is going to pressure us to do something, because even this is debatable if it's the right thing for the United States, but it may be the right thing for the United States. It doesn't mean it's the right thing for Israel. And those things have happened, and that's happened before, where the United States has pressured Israel, and Israel hasn't listened and has gone ahead and done the thing anyway. And guess what? The United States is still friends with Israel. So don't think just because we don't listen to them, just because we say thank you for advice, thank you for your opinion, I'm sorry, we got to do what we got to do, all of a sudden the United States is going to run away. And we see, not only that, United States often will say, and it has said over the years, they've made guarantees to Israel. They said, if you go to war, if you make peace with Egypt, we will be a cover for you, that if Egypt attacks you, we will send all our planes right there to protect you. And many times Israel has made the guarantee, United States made the guarantee. But guess what? They don't always follow through on it. Because even though they may mean it when they make the guarantee, 10, 15 years later, when they come to keep the promise, geopolitical situation changes. Then it doesn't make sense for the United States to get involved. And those situations happened in the 1960s with the Suez Canal, when Israel was fighting over the closure of the Suez Canal. United States told Israel, back off, and if the Suez Canal is ever closed, we will be there with our military might to take it over. What happened? Came 1973. They closed the Suez Canal. The United States was nowhere to be found. And I think if you look even more relevant today, where you have it's not just in Israel, in Ukraine, in the early 1990s, Ukraine was developing nuclear arms because they recognized the threat of Russia. And United States, along with many other countries, strongly discouraged Ukraine from developing these weapons. And they told Ukraine that if you are ever attacked by Russia, we will be there with American troops on the ground to protect you. What happened? 2024 comes, Russia attacks Ukraine. And guess what? It's not in the United States' best interest to get involved with the boots on the ground in Ukraine. So they're not doing it. They promised. It changed. Ukraine's job is to protect Ukraine. Israel's job is to protect Israel. And the truth is, at the end of the day, United States, what they want is a true, strong ally in the Middle East. They're not looking for, they don't really appreciate, they don't need a country, they don't need a 51st state. They don't need another country that's going to listen to them what to do. What they need is a strong ally in the Middle East. And what's happened is, if you even look after the wars where Israel was victorious, after the 67 war, where there was a resounding victory, and after other situations, or after Entebbe, after those, when Israel didn't listen to the United States, following that, Israel's security was always strong. Israel's relationship with America was always strong. Israel ultimately, United States ultimately, they want a peaceful world. They want problems to go away. And if you look at it today, what's going on? United States, we have an election going on. We have the candidates. It doesn't look good that there's war happening. They want peace. They don't care if that means 6 months, there's been another one. Elections are over in 6 months. And guess what? That might be in the best interest of the United States right now, that there's a peace treaty, that there's a ceasefire without any conditions. That's what they want, because that will make their poll numbers go up. And that's fine. That's okay for them to have that opinion, because they're looking out for the United States' or arguably their own best interest. But Israel has to worry about just what is in the best interest of Israel.
Supreme Court of Israel.
So what do we do? What do we do? In conclusion, what should we be doing now? And the truth is, the answer is that based on what we've learned over the last hour, for each situation, there is an answer. And there is a specific, based on whether about giving back land, and whether it's about out fighting wars. And obviously many other topics which we didn't get into tonight, such as hostages, and there's many different topics, and Torah has answers to these. But most importantly, it's a question of how do we think? What we need to change on a personal level is how we think. It's crucial, our Jewish pride. It's crucial for us to feel confident in our answers, in our understanding. This is ours. We are not strangers here. We deserve it. Hashem gave it to us. We're going to fight for it, and we're proud of it. And we see over the years, the Rebbe had hundreds of conversations for over hundreds of thousands of hours with generals, politicians in Israel, go across the political spectrum, discussing matters of Eretz Yisrael. This is Yitzchak Rabin discussing his meeting with the Rebbe.
Of this,
Because
So what the Yitzchak Rabbeinu was referring to is referencing in the Rebbe spoke often about Bilam. We just read in Hershel last week about Bilam and his brachas and his blessings, which ended up being blessings to the Jewish people. One of the things he said is Hein Am Levadav Yishkan. We're a nation that stands alone. Now we know these were all blessings. We're alone? Why is that a blessing? The Rebbe explained that the blessing of the Jewish people is that we stand alone, we stand apart, that we're not affected by everyone else. We're not affected just because what the nations are saying, what other people are saying. We win by realizing we have a God, we have Hashem, we have a Torah, we have values. And the way that we're ultimately going to win, the way all of us in this room and the Jewish people around us, the way that we can affect them, the way we win is by embracing our Jewish values, our identity, and our pride. We have to be strong. We have to have a conviction in who we are. We have to be proud of who we are. And I'm going to finish off with reading one text and a last video, and I'll let the video speak for itself to finish off. Text 9 on page 23 in the student handbook. It's a letter, it's a correspondence that the Rebbe had, which I don't know if it's known who the letter was to. It says the psychological factor has such an important role when two adversaries confront each other. When the adversary sees that his opponent is spiritually and psychologically strong and self-confident and certain of his just cause, and not prone to be impressed by the adversary or any non-Jew due to the inferiority complex mentioned above, this is the best way of preventing wars, not only major wars, but even wars of attrition.
And then the national so, but then that is the Institute, that is the Minister, and then that is the Grace Hotel, but then that is the Grace Gas, the whole is that they come in the ganzen Ordnung hinein. Und das der Bibelker, eine von der jüdischen Rede, und die Kapitän, die jedes Archiv, jedes in Kongress und Senat, und die Bibelker sein. And after that, before not speaking all, but then by reason of Shiur, but then by reason of case of Marovi, deep in the case of Marovi, we had it through it. But the case of Marovi is to stay in Eden, und Daphne, und Objekte mit der Maschine von der Seite vor und von der zweiten Seite nein. Nie die Armee und der Wettbewerb, sie seinen Glauben, und das ist doch. Dann noch wird er noch hereingeführt in der Stimme und in eine Schiebe mit gebrochenen Becken und Hummel, der bekommende Form der noch in Washington noch nicht stellen kann, die Sende ohne Welt. Und der noch wird der Messiah, die werden doch gerne erfahren.
So with that, I conclude with the bracha that with us showing our Jewish pride and proudly going out there and being proud Jews, being proud of who we are, and spreading mitzvahs and spreading Yiddishkeit around will be zoicha to the end of all this with the coming of Mashiach and Hedavim. Oh yes, please, if you could just leave them on the table, I'll collect them, the student books. They could be used again. Yeah, please. Please leave them on the table. I'll collect them. Go ahead, fine. We do might? We have them already? Okay. We'd have a medium might